The Retaliator VXP target is here, and today I want to do a target teardown, going through showing you the mechanics of every single turret so that you can answer the question, will I need an evade flagship or not? Hey everyone, Derpy here, and welcome back to another Battle Pirates video. Let's go ahead and get started. I am going to note that I'm using my full fleet of X1 Rampages. I'm doing this because these have the exact same range as the Retaliators, which is nice, so you'll be able to see what turrets you can outrange and which ones you can't. This is a little older, but it is not a Prowler fleet. The disadvantage of the Prowlers is that you're going to splash out the entire section. By the way, I already did a video with the VXP how to rank up your Retaliators, which is why this turret cluster is left empty. And I have a video coming out about the build for this one, which will include a few more notes and some more succinct information from this. Go ahead and subscribe on YouTube to see those, and if you really like supporting the content, you can become a channel member clicking the join button below on YouTube. Now, what I want to do here is go through a few of the particular turret types. The first one I want to talk about is this big ballista at the very back here, which has an extremely high, very insane range. Now, the ballista turret is these mega turrets kind of thing that we've been seeing recently. It has a ton of range, and it is going to leave splash behind you here, as you can see when this projectile hits. Now, it does do some ballistic splash damage, and the more important thing is that there is a slowdown in that thing that it leaves behind here. What you can do to mitigate this is obviously to stay moving, which is easier said than done, especially because I'm intending to auto these targets when they come out here. But the important thing is that you can use mountains to block this one because it does not fire over mountains, which is something we'll have to test with a few other of these particular items. So if I line this ship up right in front of the mountain, we should see that it misses, at least if I'm lined up properly here. It's always a little interesting and hard to see if you actually are lined up. But there's that one. It does have a minimum range which you can get into. We'll take a look at that towards the end of the target as well. That's the ballista. That's one of the most high threat items in the target. The next one I want to jump down and show you is going to be the coaxial turret. I'm going to go ahead and hit this cluster of 2 right here if I can. Now, the coaxial turrets are kind of rude because they have both high range and high damage, which I think is pretty annoying, and they're also splash. Importantly, evade is not listed as working against this thing. This is listed as having no accuracy. I do want to check and see if that is the case or is not the case here. Let's go ahead and get close to see this. As you can see, it starts shooting at me before I actually get close to it, and it is going to target the closest ship to it. None of these have any countermeasures that work with them or any evade that works with them. And as you can see, this is a ship with 92% evade. It's completely just getting pummeled by this one, and again, lots of damage to this, even though this has evade on it. Now, what I do want to do is bring out a second ship with the regular 63%-ish evade and see how much damage this one takes. Looks like approximately the same amount. So those coaxial turrets outrange you, which is pretty annoying, and evade does not work against them. But what you are going to see is that regardless of if the ship has evade or not, if you drive one ship separate from the others, only one ship's going to take damage, which I think is going to be a pretty interesting way to hit this target. Okay, that's the Drac coaxial turret. It's not too bad there. It's pretty annoying that it both has high evade and high damage, but that's enough of that one. Let's see the next one that fires at us here. We're probably going to click on the Disruptor Cannon next. The Disruptor Cannon is a ballistic turret which has a high range, although it of course has a minimum range as well, and has ballistic splash. Similar to the first case, even if I park a ship with approximately 92%, 93% evade in the middle of this one right here, we're likely going to see that he's not going to miss the entire time here. He's still going to hit me, which is kind of annoying. If I take a ship number 2, which has closer to 60% evade, we're going to see very little differences in terms of what actually is doing damage to me here. Now, obviously, you're not just going to sit in this ring the entire time. You're going to jump. That's the coax shooting at me right now, actually. The light blue pellets are the ones that are attempting to shoot at me, although those are blocked by mountains, which is interesting. There's potential to bring in some really old ships even and shoot over the mountains at this entire cluster. Although if you're from Kixeye, you didn't hear me say that. Now, what you can do against this disruptor cannon, obviously, is, let me see if you can see a little bit better here, is you can take one ship and pass that through and take the other ones and move them as well here a little bit later so that it's all damaged. Only damages the first ship is what you can do with the disruptor cannons right there. And obviously, once you're inside the minimum range, you should move toward targeting someone else because he can't do any damage to you now that you're in the minimum range. There's enough on the disruptor cannon. It seems like these are mostly going to be a ship or turret rather that you click past this one, you get inside his minimum range, and you call that the end of the story. Nothing too crazy here, likely a lower priority than some of the other turrets, like the Wendigo, which is the next one we'll talk about. Now the Wendigo here is long range. You've already seen it firing at me some, and it has accuracy-based splash allegedly. So what I should see is a little bit lower damage if I take my, and of course this coax is killing me here, if I take my flagship, which has a ton of evade out here, it is missing me a whole lot. Now the interesting thing about this one is that it's obviously going to build up a shockwave. So what I want to do is I'll bring in a few ships to kill the coaxial turret right here, because there's no reason for him to fire at me right now. I'll just get that one down. And what I want to see is what level of evade does it take in order to get a shockwave off on me. You saw right there that it did shockwave the 62% ship, which I thought was pretty interesting right there. So again, if it's shooting at the one with, it's going to shoot at the closest ship whatsoever, but if it's shooting at one with really high evade, I'm going to take almost no damage because it's missing a whole bunch of the time here. So accuracy evade does work against this particular turret. Now the problem is that my current build plan for my retaliators involves only about 66% evade. So if I get close to this one, let's see if we can see how many times one volley. See if we can get a second one off before I kill it. Nope. Second volley, it gets a splash off on the second time it shoots. So if you do not build an evade flagship or an evade ship in general, we'll come back to that, you are going to get a shockwave likely on the second time this turret shoots at you, or if there's a case where there's ever two Wendigos next to each other, which there is in this target on the very bottom left here, this might get a shockwave on me. That's pretty annoying. Okay, we'll come back to that one a little bit later as well. Next up is the irradiated thrower. This one has a firing arc. It should never do any damage to you. That's the easy way to rank on VXP. And if it does hit, it's a standard thrower. Does radioactive splash, which you can see right now. You know, pretty standard explosions everywhere. Nothing too crazy with this. This should never hit you. Okay, the next one that we have not seen yet is, surprise, surprise, a moving turret. Kixeye, I thought this was a siege target. Why you have a turret on a rail that looks extremely silly, I have no idea. But with this one, you should be able to outrange it. So let's just see right here. I'll even just wait for it to do a drive-by and see exactly how much range it has. And yeah, I'm outranging this one fine. The question is, though, if I press S and go on auto, is this thing going to shoot at me? And the answer is likely yes. Well, that's the moving mag rail turrets. If they do hit you, which they shouldn't, again, if you're driving well, it's ballistic accuracy with splash, which is a super weird combination, and I want to try that out here in just a second. What I want to do now is try and hit some of these targets. Did that guy just shoot over the mountain or right next to it? That's annoying. What I want to do now is try some techniques to try and reduce damage from this one. So for the disruptor cannon, I'm going to line up my ships and just move one. It doesn't necessarily need to be an evade one or not. I think I will pick an evade one just because of the second thing here. I'm going to have the evade ship or ship number one go through this guy first. All the damage will be on that ship, and then the other ones will go through. It should be pretty quick though, so let's see if we can do that. I'm going to move to the right side of the target and park behind in the Wendigo or close to the Wendigo here and have the evade ship sitting up front. Worked pretty well. You can see that I should switch my damage to focusing on the evade on the Wendigo because it's actually shooting at me. You can see that this disruptor did switch to firing at my back ships. And what I want to do right now is press S and see if this guy shoots at me. Looks like he does, especially because he's moving. Back to what I was saying, you saw that the disruptor did actually fire at me a little bit there on the back four ships because they came through a little bit later. So that's just another thing to be aware of. What I want to see, though, is if I just run right through this aura, are these two ships actually going to be able to damage me or not? If I just go ahead and zoom in here and then run through these, are these going to miss completely, or are they going to do any damage? Hard to tell because I'm firing two. It looks like you can just run straight through with a decent amount of speed and avoid all the damage from those, or at least most of it, which I'm pleased to see there. So these disruptors are appearing to be a pretty low threat, all things considered. Okay, let's jump around to another few turrets, the big one shooting at me, of course. And let's see about the disruptor, Wendigo, coax. So to mitigate damage against the coaxial turrets, I think that the best thing to do is to drive a tank. Note that I'm not saying evade tank, I'm saying a tank. If I take ship number 2 and park this one closer to the turret, well, it's going to get fired on by, parked in the wrong spot, but you see how the turret is only firing at one ship? That's because this one is moved off separately. It's going to do the same damage to evade and not evade because it's all splash. So you just have to split your ship on that one, and you should be able to reduce some damage. Okay, now the question is what you do when there's a massive turret cluster of all of these at once. The first thing is stay out of the range of the short range one right there, the irradiated launcher, and I'll just take the evade ship, have it move a little bit closer to everybody else here. Of course, I'm in the range of this big guy, but we're going to ignore that for now. I'm going to take ship number 1, move that off to the side there, take the other ones and park them a little bit further away. That way, everybody is shooting at only one ship, and that ship happens to be the higher evade one that's parked closer to this one, which means I'm not getting a shockwave off. The other approach would be to just take all 4 ships or all 5 ships, etc., and target the Wendigo first, which we'll try on this last attempt. I want to see if there's a splash off, if ship number 1 is left behind and have a regular fleet there. I want to see if they can still shockwave me. So let's try that. Let's go ahead and 2 Wendigos. This should be a good test. If I get a shockwave on this round, it likely means that I'm going to need higher evade on my fleet. So if I get close here, I'll click the Wendigo number 1 first, and no shockwave yet. There's your shockwave right there, which is pretty annoying. Click on the second one, see if I can kill him before he gets a shockwave off. Maybe with Retaliators, you're going to do slightly higher damage and it won't really be necessary, but that is a thing I wanted to see. So second shockwave right there. Might have even been a third one if I'm miscounting on those ones. Okay, that's not too bad there. We did see some stuff from this target. We learned some important things. Obviously, I took a ton of damage on purpose at a few locations, so don't really want to mess around too much with that. In terms of damage taken, I have a ton of ballistic damage taken and 49% combining resisted and taken. And then with radioactive, I have a ton of this was evaded, and that's the Wendigos, obviously, that are missing. And then, 13% combining resisted and taken there. If you're interested, they do appear to have pretty high ballistic resistance, which is pretty funny considering that the ships we're using are ballistic. They could just decrease the armor points, but whatever, I don't really have anything on that one. So that's the target right there, and if you're interested, the build that I'm using on this particular rampages is linked here. What this tells me is that we are likely going to want to build an evade ship. Note that I said ship because we don't know if the flag is going to have higher armor points. There's no Kingkiller present in this target, obviously. It says that on the strategy guide. And then note that my Wrathful Rampage has 42 million base hit points, and my regular has 38. So Kingkiller wasn't doing anything here. The turrets are going to shoot at the closest thing, which means that if you build a higher evade ship, it can be ship number 4, ship number 5, ship number 1. Doesn't really matter, but it is seeming to me that if you want to do extreme driving, building an evade one is likely the best move for this one, and not driving stacked either, because even when it's a splash-based turret that has no accuracy whatsoever, it is much better to shoot at a single thing and take damage from 1 than taking damage from 5. This video was supposed to be sort of an overview one about the target. I will get a more specific one about the build for the Retaliators going pretty soon here. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube so you don't miss that one. And most importantly, if you think these videos are helpful, which is the entire purpose of making them, go ahead and share this out with your alliance so they can see this thing too. If they're someone who wants to take a look and understand the build and the target, rather than just being sort of given this one, which I'm totally fine doing. Now, watching this video should help your alliance members as well prepare for the next raid if they understand what all the turrets and stuff are doing with a ship that has the same range. With that said, I want to give a huge thank you to the channel members whose names are appearing on the end screen now. If you like supporting the channel and want to see more videos like this one, click the join button below on YouTube. Until next time, this is going to be Derpy signing out, helping you be a better pirate.